watching Talking Points, a focus on the political scene in Lubbock and across the South Plains.
Welcome back. Here's a look at some of the headlines of the past week. Governor Greg Abbott has agreed to an offer made by our parent company, Nexstar, to a debate with Democratic opponent Lupe Valdez, which means you would watch that debate right here on KMAC Friday, September 28th. Sheriff Valdez says on Twitter that she's in, but she's not agreed to the terms of the debate yet. And Lubbock County commissioners are considering whether to join a lawsuit taking on big pharmaceutical companies. It has to do with the liability of those companies and the opioid crisis. That's a serious problem. And adding to local government burdens in this country. Some say those companies have pushed unneeded and addictive opioid medication to patients. No decision by commissioners yet. House Democrats presented a bill this week to abolish the nation's Immigration and Customs Enforcement Division of Homeland Security, known as ICE. Believe it or not, Republicans may bring this to a vote to get those Democrats on the record about this before the midterm elections. More political theater, but even two well-known Democrats think abolishing ICE might hurt more than help. Our Daniel Marin has more from El Paso.
ICE has become a runaway train. It has really detoured from its original mission.
The calls to abolish ICE are growing louder. Democrats in D.C. now plan to introduce legislation to do away with the agency. But prominent El Paso Democrats, Senate nominee Beto O'Rourke and congressional nominee Veronica Escobar, say from their view here along the border, scrapping ICE might not be the best way forward. O'Rourke telling the NPR station in Austin that he is open to reorganizing the Department of Homeland Security and changing the functions of ICE. But O'Rourke says there still needs to be enforcement of immigration laws.
Here in El Paso.
Escobar, in this tweet on the 4th of July, says she feels ICE needs accountability and oversight, but she doesn't think abolish ICE solves the problem.
It's easy to get attached to something that seems like an easy, quick fix and a great rallying cry, but that really doesn't address the multifaceted challenges.
Meantime, President Trump has doubled down on his zero-tolerance border policy and his support for ICE.
We want tough, strong, powerful borders, and we want no crime, and we're going to protect ICE.
Vice President Mike Pence echoing that message, talking with agents at ICE headquarters in D.C.
We will always stand proudly with the brave heroes of ICE and our Border Patrol.
That is Daniel Marin in El Paso. Let's spend 5 good minutes with District 19 congressional candidate Dr. Miguel Navarro, Democrat. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Brian. Thank you for having me.
All right, so give me some of your thoughts on this now. ICE agents help to enforce existing laws. Obviously, they were stretched very thin. Is disbanding them the way to go, or how can that be improved?
Well, I think what you have to look at is what's the problem here is the policy that's being put in place here. The separation of children from their parents is at the core of this problem, and that's a Trump administration policy that has now been reversed. But we're still dealing with issues that they've been slow in reunifying some of these children. In fact, many of them had not been unified with their parents. So that's really at the core of the issue is the policy itself that is being deemed, and I think rightfully so, as abusive, cruel, and largely ineffective. I mean, it's something that people are speaking out against.
ICE as an entity in itself, though, is probably something that should stay or should not.
I think when it comes to ICE and how we understand the whole apparatus, I think we need to understand what are our objectives when it comes to enforcing immigration law. Before ICE, it was the responsibility of the Border Patrol. They are immigration law enforcement. That's what they were created in 1924 to do. So the entity of ICE becomes another added layer that is now proven to be a bit problematic, but they're also on the forefront when it comes to enforcing these inhumane policies that we've been seeing recently.
Your opponent has said families should not be separated, but has supported the zero-tolerance policy as a deterrent for security reasons and others. What do you say to folks who say, look, it's a different world. We just can no longer let everyone in the way we kind of used to?
Well, we've never actually let everyone come in like we used to. And that's the problem, is that we have always had, at least for the past 100 years, immigration restriction. And in fact, under the Obama administration, you had one of the most stringent vetting policies and vetting processes that we've had in decades. So that concept is misdirected and misses the point. My opponent, said that after the fact that Trump had signed the executive order reversing his own policy. The thing is that in May, apprehensions had gone up a couple of percentage points. So it wasn't necessarily a deterrent. And you listen to these people and they're saying, yes, it's harmful, we're upset, and we wish it hadn't happened. But many of them are like, but we're looking back, we're looking at death if we return. So what we need to do is not necessarily let everybody in, but we need to abide by the asylum laws that we do have in our federal government that allows them to seek this process and seek due process so we can evaluate and see if they qualify. I think that's what we need to look at. So we've never had an open door. We haven't had an open door since 1918, if I'm correct. Somewhere, no, 1917 with our immigration restriction law.
Long time.
It's been a while. It's been at least 100 years.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about the migrant children and just the backlog of cases and how they seem a bit unprepared to handle a lot of the situations there as they're going on right now. Your opponent has called on Congress to act. The president has called on Congress to act. He co-sponsored one of the bills that could not get through as far as immigration reform. Did you support either of the bills that were proposed, at least through the House? And what would you need to see to get behind any immigration reform legislation?
Well, number one is that what's the problem with these bills that are being proposed is that they're still adding that funding for this proposed border wall. That Border Patrol, a number of agencies have said it will not be effective. So that's one of the stickers. And the other thing is that you don't really see a full attention to the DACA and to the Dreamers and evaluating their pathway to citizenship for those who have been abiding by the rules and regulations of that current system. So no, I don't think it's a truly comprehensive bill. It's not one that's going to happen overnight because of Trump saying, I want this. So what we have is a number of issues that have not been fully resolved yet.
These have been fluid issues, I think, by the hour there almost. Some Democrats, though, in Congress have said, publicly and privately, maybe we'll approve some money for the border wall in exchange for a deal that would protect DACA recipients. Is that a good way to go?
You know, Schumer mentioned that, and he had proposed that it would basically be a way of getting the Trump administration to sign on, but then it would have to be a matter of will that actually come to fruition of putting funding in there, because now you got to take it to appropriations, and where are you going to get that money from? So it was a very clever political way of saying, yes, we'll give you that if you give us this. And I think that that's one political way of addressing it, but I think that what we need to do is we need to address the issue of not looking at immigration, border security, and the smuggling of illicit goods as one simple and cohesive problem. They are separate issues. Immigration does not lead to border security problems and so forth. I mean, not entirely. So we need to look at those differently. We have farmers right now in California and other places that are really hurting because they can't find workers. Because either their workers are either being detained or they're fearful of getting detained. You have California farmers who voted for Trump that are now just sweating bullets because they can't be able to get workers. So that's what we're seeing around the country.
Just the final few seconds we have here, on those lines, your opponent has said that business owners should be held responsible if they hire illegal workers and be subject to fines and things of that nature. Do you support that? Do you think that should happen?
I think so. I think it's a two-way street. I think I'd certainly agree with that. But the thing is that that's what Reagan said. When we look at the fines and the punitive measures that we've taken, they've been very small. You're not going to, you're going to charge Walmart, which is a multi-billion-dollar company, a few $1,000s for hiring unauthorized workers. That's a drop in the bucket for them. So I would press my opponent, and I would press people who are agreeing with him, is like, what exactly are those punitive measures? Because they keep talking about back taxes for these workers. First of all, how are you going to measure that when they're supposed to be under the table? Number two, what about the back taxes that those employers owe and not paying into Medicare and to Social Security like they're supposed to when it comes to our certain system? So, yeah, it's a two-way street, but now you got to dictate how that two-way street's going to go.
4 odd months now until the election in November. We're going to talk to Miguel Lovario several more times between now and then. Good to see you again.
Hey, thank you, Brian. I appreciate it.
Straight ahead, local farmers try to play the right strategy in the crossfire of this trade fight with China. It matters to you. It's next on Talking Points.